Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to Bev Live. Here we are once again on our lovely same time Friday evening. As usual, here we've got Bjorn Landwehr. How you doing, sir? And myself, Brett Ball. We are the founding team here at Bev Live. And Bjorn, something interesting happened to me today. I've had a day full of surprises. Let's just say from everything from car trouble to forgetting about I had to go buy some certain things for the what I was cooking tonight, and luckily I was able to make it into the store before my car battery went kaput. But I was walking through Whole Foods, and don't judge me, I don't do up my all my grocery shopping. Was buying just a few things, but one thing I've always loved about Whole Foods is their craft beer and their wine selection. And I was walking through the wine section, and I they have it sectioned off in a way that makes sense to me, usually by style or by varietal. And I got to the section that's red blend. It's the classic mystery, I feel like. And I want to talk today, Bjorn, kind of educate me about style blending, because I think that's something for the average consumer. They have no clue about what that really means. Are there any rules around it? What do you think?
That's a really, really good question. Red blend can be basically anything red. I mean, that's the thing where I sometimes get a little bit confused because people tell you it's like, yeah, I like a red blend. I think what they mean usually to say is I like a well-rounded wine that has it all. And if you blend wines, then you blend them in a way that it makes sense, so that it is well-rounded or well-balanced for that matter. So that's the huge advantage that you have when you blend wines. You can adjust. Like some varietals may have more tannins, some have less, some have certain flavors that you want to have in your wine, and some have something else. And you kind of, it's like you said, you were mentioning cooking. It's like cooking, and you can put it all together. And sometimes like it's perfectly fine to just have a steak and eat that steak. Absolutely delicious. Nothing wrong with that. That will be your one varietal. But sometimes it's nice to come put a paella together where you have all kinds of different flavors and all kinds of things mixed together, and that would be then the red blend. I mean, from a legal perspective, there are really not too many or any I'm aware of regulations that govern red blends, other than it's going to have at least two varietals, and they should be red. And so. But that's pretty much it. But it's sometimes a little bit confusing because like I said, some people like red blend, and it's it can be confusing because it can be so, like I said, so many different things. Usually when you go into the grocery store, you will have a lot of at the $10 range where you have big blends that are a little bit higher in sugar, a little bit oaky, at the $10 to $15 kind of price range. You all know kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then you have other wines where you can go pretty high end, but usually those have, like, for example, less sugars. And one of these wines has pretty much nothing to do with the other category. Both categories are fine, but they're very, very different.
Got it. So yeah, that is interesting because immediately I think of like Scotch, for instance. Since we're Bev Live, we can talk about spirits too. Why not? So Scotch is infamous. A lot of single malt snobs out there will call, jokingly. They'll say, "No, I'll never drink a blended Scotch," and it's like, why? And I've heard a lot of different reasons, but some of the blends are really compelling because they'll mix Johnny Walker Blue is one that I'm familiar with, but they have some of those original Scotch whiskeys that are, from the same batch from I don't know how long ago that they still have on reserve, or a version of that, and they mix a little bit along with something more recent, maybe aged 20 years, 30 years. And I think about wine too. I'm like, well, that's a cool way to experience a lot of different flavors, almost like a time capsule in a bottle as you drink it. And I don't know if there's I'm sure there's no rules necessarily for a blend, whether the grapes are sourced from a particular location, old world, new world. I'm not sure on that, but it seems like the lot of possibilities there, right?
There are regulations for that because you could blend grapes together or juice together from different appellations, and that's where it gets a little tricky. Like, what are you going to put in the bottle, or what it actually is.
Exactly.
And so there are regulations around appellation or even country of origin. So there are regulations for that, but nothing will stop you from actually mixing something together. You may just have to say, table wine, which I believe is like the widest category that you can do. So you can just pair your wine, I think, as table wine, and that covers pretty much everything. In the wine world, there's actually something similar that you just mentioned with Scotch and aging for a certain amount of years, which is very similar to the Scotch scenario you just described, which is port.
I love port. I love a good port. Who doesn't, I guess?
I love good port too, and especially like when you look at the tawnies, for example, you have your regular tawny, you got your 10-year, 20-year, 30, 40, and so on. And it's just about the average time that you have in that bottle, how old the different compartments, different parts are, and it could be basically anything. And you could just leave some high-end tawny in there, blend it always in, and it's like 60 or 70 years old. So you have the same thing pretty much in the wine world, where especially in the port part, where you can blend different years together, and you just have to average out, like just like in whiskey.
Yeah, hey, I'm all about that. I'm trying to think of there was another blend that I had recently, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was pretty, it's one of those things with the label. There wasn't much of a label there. It was pretty obscure. But as I started to drink it, I noticed, and the reason I'm asking Bjoern is from a wine tasting expert sort of palate perspective. I noticed the profile shifted heavily because it was a blend, but if I had to guess, very strong Pinot Noir backbone to it. But as you went into it and you let that settle on your tongue, it went from that really fresh, jammy sort of Pinot to almost a slight oaky, very earthy flavors to it. Is that common for a blend? Is that something they try to hit the mark on?
Well, you're almost like describing, I'm not sure. I mean, what you're almost describing is more like a Burgundy kind of style Pinot Noir, where you've got that earthiness. Whereas if you have, for example, a Pinot Noir from, let's say, Oregon, the fruit flavors are much more dominant than the earthy part that you would have in Burgundy. But I think in general, and this may not answer exactly your question, but in general, especially with the big brands, like less expensive brands, that the red blends, the huge advantage that you have is that you don't have a recipe. It's not like Coca-Cola or something. You don't have a recipe, but you have a tasting profile that you want to hit. So when consumers come back, year after year after year,
right,
it's very consistent.
Wow.
And while the blend may change over time, the style will not change. So the wineries or the brand owners decide, this is the style that we want our consumers to have, to enjoy. We know our research shows this is the style they're going to like. So they then, blend, and there's consistent blending going on towards the styles. So over time, the blend may change depending on, and we're talking about natural product here, because, 1 year, the cap may be different to the next year because of our climate. And so the compartments of that blend may change over time, but the tasting profile will stay pretty much the same.
Wow, that's fascinating, and good point. Yes, I remember several live streams ago. It seems like ancient history, and how we talked about that sustainability and the climate change and how that was affecting regional wines and even the alcohol percentage too. So that's yet another fun fact about that same situation that I was not aware of. So, but hey, Bjoern, thank you for your time this evening. We'll go ahead and cut loose, and we'll see what I've got in the cellar here to crack open. I don't know about you, but thanks for tuning in, everybody. Nothing. Okay, yeah, that works. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, as we say. Thank you.
Bye.